All right, good evening. We'll call the January 11th, 2021 Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board meeting to order. If you're called in on the Zoom meeting, a reminder to press *9 to raise your hand and *9 to put your hand down. *6 will unmute and remute your microphone. If you're on the Zoom application, you should see on the screen a place to raise your hand and unmute whenever called upon. Are there any staff or trustee addition or deletions?
Staff has no additions or deletions.
None. Will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. Public comments. Ms. Limley.
As the board member, you are to be a good steward of the hospital finances. Ask yourself that question if you are. I made a record request to see what the job descriptions and the hourly rate being paid for the employees that were formerly CHS employees. Dale provided that. Have any of you board members looked at what those employees are being paid? Have you, Lori? Raise your hand if you did look at it. And Dr. Thompson, have you looked?
From what I understand, it's just a comment section, so we don't answer.
Okay. We can raise your hand. You don't have to have comments. But anyway, when I looked at the job description, it appears to be what they were doing when CHS was operating the hospital. Dale went on to further explain that some of the things they were doing, with the exception of the person who was formerly an HR person, now she's an administrative assistant, and she's taking inventory. And he said 75% was complete. And he said he would provide that. But what they're getting paid to go check inventory, $48 an hour, plus vacation, plus sick leave. I just think that's outrageous. You know, if you're employed by the state under OPS, other personnel services, you don't get sick leave, you don't get vacation time. You get paid an hourly rate, and if you be there, you know, more than 6 months or a certain period, you can apply for health insurance. And it's necessary for 2 IT persons, and if the inventory gets completed, will she be released, Dale, if the inventory is done?
Barbara, I don't know. She's not taking inventory, she's creating an inventory. There is no.
Like she's saying there's 10 desks, 99 hospital beds.
Yeah, it's not as if she's going through the building and checking out what she finds.
Okay.
They're creating it from the word go, which is something we have to have legally.
That is true.
Okay, so there's that. Depending on where we're at in vetting the other companies, where we may be, will probably determine what happens next with the employees. We're not there yet, so I don't know.
Well, I don't want to be, or the authority, and you board members don't need to put the authority in a situation where you have to play into the state retirement system, which you're already paying for Dale, and you can't even benefit from it, but the authority's paying into the system. And
Well, just for the record, those employees were hired as full-time temps, which means not to exceed 6 months to avoid that. And the other question, you said one other thing.
When this is done as far as what she's doing, will she?
And I do not know the answer to that yet. As far as the IT people go, Barbara, I do not know personally that 2 are needed.
Well, the board members need to find out.
Well, and here's the way we find out. the two people that I do know are needed there, Linda
Oh,
and
yes.
Angie, they are the ones who advised me that it would take 2 IT people to keep the systems running, and I relayed that in previous.
What
meetings.
systems are you talking about?
Everything down there is basically computer-based. And as much as Dendy can repair something, Dendy can't actually take
What
care of.
do these systems control?
Air conditioning, boilers, I mean, literally everything in the building, lights.
But anyway, I just questioned, if they were all needed. And when I was looking at the information that Mr. Williams provided, Angie takes in the timesheets or whatever, they need to be using a punch clock, punch in, punch out. She says 8 hours. I went by there at 10 till 5, there were 2 people there. Where are the other 3 or 4 people that are supposed to be there? If they're staying there until 5, they need to be there. And one of the other question is, has there been any discussion as to when there'll be a public meeting to see what the direction of the authority should go?
We're gonna be discussing that tonight.
And the outbuildings, they need to be put on the market for sale. CHS came in because they had no choice to take all of it. They probably wouldn't have wanted to try their damnedest to get doctors to come in because no doctors wanted to come here. So we'll give you basically free office space. And it just needs to go on the market. It's a dinosaur, as Mr. Douglas has said several times, and I will reiterate again, is that the authority got out of the business 40 some odd years ago because of the cost. Since that time, the nature of healthcare has changed. And you can't refuse somebody to come to the ER, and the taxpayers of Columbia County don't need to get stuck with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Limley. Are there any comments from those participating virtually?
Yes. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Looker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest in the future with some of the $23 million that the this hospital authority has in the bank, that you get microphones for each person for these virtual meetings. Most of what Dale had to say was barely intelligible over the computer. I believe that's a sunshine issue. You may want to ask Mr. Kobeline about that if you're going to broadcast these meetings virtually, it's problematic at many meetings that the people that are speaking have to be understood. That's always been a problem with Mr. Kobeline, although lately he speaks up, but clearly that the participants in the meeting have to be understood. So I would appreciate that you would look into that. The other thing is, and I appreciate Dr. Thompson's not answering questions. That's a political thing. This is the only time the public has to address these members of the board that are appointed by the governor. And I would suggest that if you don't want to answer the public's questions, that you should resign from the board. The public pays a lot of money, which is clearly in the bank. As far as the consent agenda goes, if you look at the consent agenda, I don't know why that the total of the amount in the bank is not part of that agenda. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. You can, if you look at those items, I didn't see that connected there exactly, that you had $23 million in the bank. That doesn't seem to be transparent. When I got it, it's possible that I overlooked that. And maybe Dale can confirm that that's not there or is there, or you can. My final thing is this, and I'll discuss the other items as they come up, is the billing of Mr. Kobeline. I will once again reiterate that that billing is not up to standards. In one of his recent bills, he mentions the Department of Transport, the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, but he didn't have to do that. Other things, his law firm says, as appropriate. He spoke to somebody. I spoke to a vendor. Well, clearly, he's not being transparent. Earlier today, Dale Williams said that he knows what he's talking about. The purpose of Mr. Kobeline's bills is not that Dale Williams knows. In Florida's public records law and the Sunshine Law, if he's going to write it down, then everybody's got to know. That's clearly not according to practice. And again, I would ask that you look into that and the $750 a month that Mr. Kobeline, who wants to now be a judge, as everybody knows, in Columbia County, I think we need a greater explanation of that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That's my comments until we get to the items.
Thank you, Mr. Looker. Any other comments from those that are called in? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Ms. Chancey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. New business, Mr. Williams.
I will try to speak louder, given that apparently I can't be heard very well. But the first item is the first resolution of the new year. That would be resolution number 2021-001. And this, of course, is a resolution which is extending the state of emergency. And of course, we're doing so in accordance with all of the latest state mandates through their state of emergency. So staff certainly recommends the approval of resolution number 2021-001.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution 2021-001 as stated. Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
And then, of course, these states of emergencies are extended as needed by the chair through the resolution itself. And our next item would include all of those to be ratified from November 13th, 2020 through the 14th of January. And we would ask that the proclamations of extension issued by the chair be approved by the trustees.
Make a motion that we approve the proclamations covering the period November 13th through January 14, 21, issued by the chair in accordance with resolution number 2020-004. Second.
A motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Mr. Douglas. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, is an update. This is the monthly report that I try to provide the trustees, which includes various things as they relate to the continued operations, or at least the continued keeping the building in an occupiable state of Lakeshore Hospital. Included in here are the things that Ms. Lemley mentioned. I'm sorry that we didn't get to meet last month. Those salaries were part of that report also. But if you have any questions about this, either in the meeting or at other times, please give me a call. I simply want to make sure that you have the latest information as to what is going on as it relates to keeping that facility in an occupiable state. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time.
I have a question.
Mr. Looker.
Yeah, I was just wondering why the hospital needs two IT people, an IT director and an IT other person. There is nobody there to help. Nobody's using the equipment other than the equipment that's used to keep the plant running. I believe Mr. Douglas would be somewhat of an expert in that field. Why they need two IT people when there's no patients and no staff and just about nobody in the hospital. Thank you.
Mr. Lilker, I don't know if you heard my response earlier to Ms. Lemley. Basically, my response was as follows. I personally cannot say that two people are needed in IT. What I can tell you is that the people that I trust to keep me advised as to what is needed to keep the hospital in an occupiable state have told me that the two people were needed. And those were the two people that were originally hired. We've not added to that, even though we've not taken away from that. So when I get my weekly report, I ask, does there need to be changes, additions, deletions? Do we need to do something that we're not doing? And as of now, I am of the opinion that it takes two IT people to keep the systems of the hospital at a degree of readiness in case we're able to release it.
Mr. Williams, just another quick question. Do we have a plan in place if we go past or once we start approaching the 6-month period, what that plan will be to transition these employees, the ones that are needed to maintain the facilities? Do we have a plan? Are we working on a plan for that?
We know in our mind what will happen. We are all in hopes, though, that we will have vetted and we will know before that decision is made whether we're going to have a new lessee or not.
Okay.
It's a lot easier decision to make if you know that.
Ms. Lindley?
In connection with this, if it doesn't happen, we've got 5 or 6 employees that would have to join the FRS. Can we not hire a company to do the same things that they're doing, so we're not responsible? Like, we could have hired Dale Consulting Firm, but that didn't happen. The board didn't make that decision.
Maybe we'll hire Dell's consulting firm to provide those employees for us. We'll have to look into it and see legally what can be done and not.
And it's on the subject, as far as the electric bill, has Disney looked to cut back systems, so we're not paying Florida Power $18,000 a month for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have discontinued phone lines. We have looked at what we're paying for in terms of redundancy. We know we use 2 gallons of water a minute down there. We've broken it down as much as we can. It's a proposition, but to keep the facility open is just going to cost until we know what we're going to do.
Right. As far as water is that building and I call it the, Randolph building. I realize there are older structures, you don't want mold, but you don't have to have it at house living condition.
And it's not.
Okay.
It's not.
And as far as the security, we're having, why don't we hire local LCPD or Columbia County Sheriffs to do that, keep the money straight to the individual versus a security company.
Cost may be a little different as well, but it's something we can explore for sure.
I'd rather, my personal opinion for what it's worth, I'm in favor of a security company to alert the police of an issue.
What exactly does the security company do?
It's a warm body to deter.
No, what are they doing over there 24/7?
They're patrolling
They're just
the
present.
campus to.
Yeah, just a set of eyes and ears that are present, what I understand.
Just on the perimeter of the building, make sure nobody breaks in?
No, there's more than one building. It's everything within the entire campus.
That building and that building.
They remove orders because the employees are inside the building. They don't necessarily see people who come up. At nighttime, they patrol and keep people out of the parking lots. They do general security and basically exactly what was just said. If they find something that's an error, they call and ask for law enforcement.
And if they see a door that maybe looks like it's been jimmied or tried to be jimmied, they
Yeah.
call, or broken window or anything like that.
Any further discussion on this item?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to correct something I said earlier. I did see the employee salaries, but when Barbara was talking, I didn't put it together that it was in Richard's report. Okay.
Mr. Williams, I believe was item number 4.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request for the trustees to consider the development of a calendar. We are at the point that we need to schedule those that have submitted proposals for operating Lakeshore Hospital as a treatment facility, even though it may not be at the same level as was previously operated. And we need to begin the vetting process. This would be the opportunity for them to speak with you about their particular plan of action as to how they may wish to operate it, you to ask your questions. And it appears we're going to have 3 that would fit into this category. I suggest, but it's totally up to the trustees, I suggest that you do them on separate days. My concern is if you try to bring them in one night and you allow an hour for everybody, you're going to get into conversation that you're not able to complete. I think this is the opportunity to ask good questions and to have in-depth discussions. And, with the intent and hopes that one of these may provide opportunity for that building. The second thing that we need to consider is how we're going to handle the public input and public participation side of this. Now, this has come up in previous meetings. My personal opinion is we're better off to vet these proposals that we're going to vet and then have the public participation. That way we kind of know what the market is providing, not providing, and at what cost. But that's just a personal opinion, and there is no real right or wrong opinion about that. And you've been asked before to consider to let the public participate from the word go, and maybe even in advance of. The decision is the trustees' decision. But if I had to make a recommendation, my preference would be to let's vet the 3 proposers first, and then let's have the public participation. We can have summarized for the public what we've learned. We can put it in a form that's easy to understand, and we'll see what happens.
As far as scheduling meetings with the proposers, is that something we could do tonight to start looking at the schedule for when that would happen? Are we talking about trying 1 a week or 2 a month?
It's really what your schedules will permit, because this is going to require quite a bit of your time. Quite a bit of your time. I've been in some meetings with these people just getting some very basic information and spent several hours. So, I mean, some of these could go long. Yes, sir.
So Dale, there are only 3 proposals to operate the building?
Yes. Now there were, just to remind everyone, Doc, there were many more proposals, 20 something in total, if I remember. There were originally 4 that actually dealt with running the hospital to some extent. One of those has withdrew, leaving 3. Now, if something should happen and you're not successful in negotiating something for the hospital, then the plan was to go to the other proposers, which would be more of a landlord, a lessor and lessee type arrangement. Not so much one, though, to be in hospital operations.
Who were the 3 that are remaining?
One would be Shands. One would be the North Florida Heart Group, but they're doing this business under the name Panacea. And the other is Ace Medical. Yes.
So there's Shands, and Shands has UF, the OB-GYN, so I guess they'd be pushing so they can have a place to deliver babies locally.
That would be a question that could be asked.
and I will say this again, if taxpayers are the ones who are footing the bill, you need to get at least some input from the community. The community may say, I don't give it to Hootie, and why waste these vendors' time?
I think we all know that there are individuals that want to see a full service hospital. I think there's some that want to see, at least from what I've heard, at least an emergency room. So I think we need to vet these options. We need to get the public input. I think that's part of what we need to discuss now is, do we get the public input before and after, whatever that may look like. That's what we need to decide tonight. So then we can also start and then schedule when we're going to have the discussions with the proposers.
Mr. Chair, why can't we meet with whoever we're speaking with, and that night let the public speak afterwards?
That's a possibility as well, I'm sure.
How does that format work? Out of curiosity, what?
That we listen to everything they've got to say and we conduct our business. And when they're completed and ready to leave the room, we can listen to public output.
3 times? Okay.
Yeah.
If somebody's really interested this time.
That's true.
Dr. Thompson?
I would just, it might be premature to ask this, but I mentioned it once before in a meeting. I think as we go through this process, so that we know, what our expenses are and stuff, I would like a proposal on what it would be to raise the building as well. I think that would be an important thing to have as we figure long-term costs, et cetera, because, last time we looked at the building, there were some serious issues still with the property that are going to have to be dealt with in the future. And those aren't going to go away. And so, does this process continue, or do we put a reasonable end to it? You know what I mean? So I think I would just ask that one of the proposals be a demolition and raising the property proposal.
I feel like that would probably be after we talk to these three.
Well, I would say that he's got a point. My only question was, is it raise the campus or raise the main building? Because I don't think there's issues with the other. That building's, questionable, right? What's the other building that we've got? We've got this building on.
2-story.
We're just talking about the main structure over there, right? The one with
The
all the.
one that's most problematic.
Yeah.
We've been having for the last 2 years, all these discussions over.
That's not a bad idea, because that is not going to be an easy number to just come up with. You're not going to get a couple, you're not going to go grab 5 or 6 guys and go.
Are we gonna
stuff that thing in a
pay
dumpster.
somebody to give us a price on how much it's gonna cost, whenever that might not be an option? If we find somebody that wants to occupy the building and operate a hospital.
I think you could get there's a possibility you could get an order of magnitude. You wouldn't get a quote, but I think you could get an order of magnitude by someone remotely familiar with the building, if that makes sense. When somebody puts a gun to my head and says, give me a square foot price, and I have to say something, I typically will give them a range.
I think that's a good idea.
Do we not have to, Fred, maybe this is for you, when we're going to lease the building or propose leasing it to someone, do we have to disclose the issues with the building, or is that where?
You would want to disclose them so that you can negotiate and defer any potential issues in the future as much as possible to mitigate those. But also you will have the potential lessee perform their due diligence also.
Yeah, so I just think that's we need to know that, I think.
Yeah, just for your information, these proposers that we've been dealing with, short list we'll call it, they've been given the engineering reports, the architectural reports. They've asked questions honestly, I think there's been very transparent. I mean, there's nothing about that building I haven't told.
Right, and I'm not saying that you're trying not to tell them.
Oh, I know, but I
But we
want,
were on track to put $6 million into that building on phase one, and we were on track to put 12 million in phase whatever. So that building hasn't changed, and the question is that something that we as a board moving forward still want to spend money on because we can do our mission without that building? That's what I'm
and I think, Doc, when you get the chance to speak to these people, they will tell you how they would like to see that addressed.
Okay, and that's fine. That'll be a great part of the
Yeah,
discussion.
so, I mean, it's part of what you're gonna be discussing with
Okay.
them.
Mr. Chair.
ma'am.
You know how I've been asking to take a tour of the building? Now that we don't have Lisi, I could take a tour of the building. And on my tour, there are some rooms that do not have full baths with them. It's doable. It would cost some money, but it's doable. There is one wall that needs something on the outside because there's water seepage. And it's toward a corner. It has been repaired a couple of times. Well, my personal experience working in hospitals, and I think Dr. Thompson will pretty much agree with me, hospitals, especially if they're leasing, tend to patch. They don't repair. So, I mean, that is repairable. It's something that if it happened at my house is repairable. Surely it's repairable there. There were a couple of large machines that probably don't have more than a 2 to 3 year life and would have to be replaced within that period of time. There's a lot of equipment in there that is still very good and very usable. But what surprised me is how much dead space there is in that hospital. Things that could be used. Now, I know that when somebody is leasing a piece of property, you don't have the right to go in and tell them, you're going to do this, that, or the other thing. Okay, but I've been wondering ever since Rhonda told us that they were only using 20 beds. That hospital has a capacity for over 40 beds, not including ICU or the OB. And I was amazed to see how many of these rooms with full bathrooms were offices. Now, I believe that is a misuse of the available space. And I believe that hospital has a great deal of potential. And the money that Dr. Thompson was referring to, most of that has to do with roofing and the exterior of the building. Well, the exterior doesn't have anything other than an aesthetic value as far as our money goes. As far as the roofing, we took care of the main roof that was leaking. The one where they said that they actually put buckets down to catch the rain. Our own people told us that we hired to look at the roof, told us that the other roofs, they could be taken care of with very little money. You didn't have to replace them, which is one reason why we let's take care of this instead. So I think these are things that we have to evaluate also. Now, I do know anytime a company is leasing a hospital, if we decide to lease this time, we need to make sure that we take care of the repairs so that we know they're done properly. Not leave it to somebody else that's going to patch it when it really needs to be replaced. Thank you.
Any comments on how we can move forward with the calendar development, with getting public input and interviews and with the proposers.
I think just set it up and, well, I'm on board with whatever you guys got going on, so set it up and we'll be here.
Of course, these are all open to the public. So whether you choose to allow public input after they present and you question there still can be an attendance. I mean, this is not in any way out of the sunshine. These meetings are going to be very much in the public, so.
I think-
The idea of what Barbara said, we let them attend and then we get the input directly after. I think that's two birds with one stone. Just like Dale said, it's gonna take some time, but I don't see there's no easy way through this one. We got 3 good meetings coming up.
Is everybody in agreement that we do it separately?
3 separate. Yeah, I agree with that. 3 separate, yeah.
Separate for sure.
Well, then, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest if y'all have got anything on your calendars over the next 3 to 4 weeks, let Sonia know, or we don't schedule something on top of that. And is the 5:15 start time good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but all we kind of need to know is if any of you have conflicts, because obviously we only have a quorum. And we need everyone to participate in the meetings.
Everybody will check their calendars and get with Sonia this week.
And just to make sure we're clear, we will listen to the presentation. The trustees will be asked questions. You'll do whatever discussions are necessary. And then immediately after that, any public comment will be taken.
And it'll be in this room. correct?
Yes, sir. See no reason to move it unless some of you do.
Well, I was just wondering, how much public is going to be public?
You can go upstairs.
We could go upstairs, but I think are we gonna broadcast it as well?
Yes.
We broadcast it. I mean, our capacity
Yeah,
should be
just for-
fairly limited.
Spacing and all that stuff, how many public. Will you know how many public people are going to attend, or is it you don't know?
No, sir, it's hard to say. There is a lot of interest, as the chair indicated earlier. I mean, there's much more than you would think. Now, does that necessarily equate to people attending meetings? I don't know.
Can you ask in the announcement that if you plan on attending in person, could you kindly notify the staff so we can make the proper, preparations, spatial arrangements and seating and rooms and all that stuff for people?
We could definitely do that. I just want to make sure that that's not some violation of public meeting law.
If we advertise that we're going to have it here, then we have 300 people say they're going to show up. Do we have to re-advertise to have it at the school board auditorium?
Yeah, if we have 10 people, it's no problem. You have 60, 70, it's gonna be an issue.
True.
Well, it said there's the upstairs.
And that'll hold probably, what do you think, Barbara, 80 people without a problem?
Yeah, but it'd be nice to know that ahead of time so Carl could
Yeah.
get his equipment to the right place and all that kind of stuff, if possible.
Well, we've already looked at the place upstairs. We did that months ago just in case, and we talked about that, having an alternative location. So we'll try to work out the logistics, Dr. Thompson,
Okay.
just in case, and we'll try to prepare for whatever. But I'm kind of the opinion that most people, because of COVID, will probably on the public side wish to participate virtually, electronically, as opposed to in person. So maybe I'm wrong.
All right, so we'll get our calendars to Sonia for the next month. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much. I have a couple of things regarding this. The first thing is when you schedule these meetings, I suggest you check the calendar and make sure you're not in conflict with either the city or the county of anything else that is going on in Columbia County. I remind this governor's board that you're a all-county taxing district, and it might not be the best etiquette to schedule these meetings when they're in conflict with either the county or the city.
We usually do that with our special meetings as well, so.
Yeah, I'm sure that you will.
confident Dale will do the same this time.
I just thought I would mention that. Most of what Lori said, I had no idea what she said. The important things got garbled, which would be another reason to look into microphones when you have these big meetings, or at least do sound checks so that everybody could be heard. And the one thing that maybe somebody could explain to me, which is I find very confusing, it's been actually two things. It's been known for some time that there was only the occupancy rate at Shands at Lakeshore was only between 20 and 25 people. It's pretty amazing that the governor's board claims to have discovered at the last minute that there was only 20 to 25% occupancy in that hospital. Maybe Ms. Chansey could take her hand away from her mouth and explain how it is that she only found this out at the 12th hour. And the other thing I would remind you that if you're going to sell that hospital or knock it down, I think you're going to have to declare it surplus. And Mr. Cobaline could clearly help you with this, and then offer it up for sale before you get a demolition price. Somebody might want to buy the building. And if you're going to sell it, then whatever inventory you're doing, which has not been done by a company that does inventory, is going to have to be marked. You're going to need prices. You're going to need estimates. Is that something that clearly should have been done already and in the process? And my understanding that that's not been done. So I think you folks have a lot of homework to do, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully you will act responsibly and do that first. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And just to be clear, that's what's happening now is inventory is being built. So we have an inventory list of what is in the building. Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Williams, the update on the liability, D&O.
Okay, this is for the trustees E&O errors and omissions policy. Last year, the premium was $20,000 in round numbers. This year, the premium was $24,000. The reason that the increase occurred is the unit price has not changed, but the exposure has. This year on the renewal, the additional space in the hospital was picked up as part of it, as well as the additional 6 employees. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that the increase had nothing to do with a unit price increase. It had to do with more exposure. And under policy, the executive director can only approve those with a 5% or less increase. So it has to be placed on the agenda and the trustees asked to approve it. So at this time, we are asking the trustees to approve the renewal.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My question is, it's up 20% in round numbers. I don't understand that. You're not dealing with any patients. Nobody's in the hospital. You really don't have a hell of a lot of decisions to make. Why did it go up 20%? What is the exposure with nobody over there?
Because the authority has more employees and more square footage. Before that square footage was leased. And those were not the authority's employees, and they now are.
So we're paying another $4,000 for the part-time employees now?
And the
That's part
hospital
of the deal?
buildings, and the hospital buildings as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve the 2021 premium in the amount of $24,024 as stated.
Second.
Got a motion by Dr. Thompson, a second by Ms. Chansey. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
Just for the record, we argued forever with the company about that. I didn't like the exposure that was levied against us either, but at the end of the day, they won, not me. So it's not as if it was not argued. Next item, Mr. Chairman, trustees, is our medical assistance plan. I think all of you are aware there's 4 components to that plan. One is the financial assistance plan, where the authority actually screens applicants who meet our guidelines. And for those that meet, we provide them a physician where they can have a primary care. And for those that need it, we provide some pharmaceuticals within limits. And we also have had in the past a hospital program where we had a cooperative agreement with Lakeshore Hospital. Currently, because CHS is no longer the lessee of the facility and that lease is gone, you have a prime opportunity to review our program, our medical assistance program, and to make changes where you believe changes should be made. Now, we've discussed one in the past, and that dealt with the financial assistance program. And we specifically talked about the role that assets were playing in limiting persons who would otherwise qualify for the program. So I've taken the liberty of including in the agenda packet a draft with highlighted and strike through and underline language, which would sort of give an idea of changes that we could make that would open up our numbers based on what we know has happened historically. Certainly not asking you to approve that tonight. I just want to make sure that you're aware of it and take a look at it. I am certain that there are questions, and I'm certain that there are just like it was with CHS. The ability to amend it requires more persons participating in that process. So now is a prime opportunity. The fourth leg of our medical assistance program dealing with the hospital. Obviously, we do not have a lessee for the building at this time. However, the medical center is interested in providing hospital services. These services basically would include those very services that were being provided previously by Lakeshore. They have submitted an agreement, which is part of this package for you to also review. I've asked Fred to take a look at it, and we need your input as to how you feel about such an arrangement and what changes, if any, you would like to propose. So I would suggest that any you may have, if you would, to please send Fred and I an email and let us know. But we do intend to reschedule this at a future meeting for discussion. And the document we would want to discuss would be the one that has any suggested changes made, not the one that was proposed necessarily.
Is this the very last thing in my packet? Is the proposal from HCA?
Yes, sir, it should be.
Was this sent to us by email, or can I keep these copies?
You can keep them, and if you need it electronically, I'll be glad to resend it.
I can make marks on it with a pencil if I keep the copy.
But it is the last document.
Okay. As long as I take a look.
Have they, excuse me, have they consented to let us check their charts like Cynthia does for the doctor's offices?
The answer is no, but in fairness to them, I've not asked them, would they?
I would like to know if they would do that. That is our auditing process. And I don't see where there should be an exception made just because they're a hospital. Also, I do not believe that we need to necessarily enter into an agreement with them if we are going to reopen our hospital.
But while you're reviewing those materials, if you have any questions that I may be able to answer, or Fred, please feel free to call. We want to get them to you where you could start looking at them. We can determine what we need to do.
Also, on page 5, where it struck out because of the Affordable Care Act coverage. I know at one point, we were not allowed to issue any type of program to these people if they qualified for the federal programs.
That's still part of the Affordable Care Act as I understand it.
Which means that they would be disqualified if they could qualify for that. Because we had some people when Obamacare first came out that would have liked to have qualified for our program because they would have been better off financially. But we could not go ahead and give them.
Ms. Lemley.
And it's kind of in connection with what Lori had said. If Lake City Medical Center can do what needs to be done, why should the authority even think about bearing the cost of a building? You know, get rid of it before it is truly a dinosaur. And Lake City Medical Center, and I don't know if anybody was on the board, Lori may have come in, they wanted to be a participant. However, board members at the time didn't want to, and I'm not sure if it was because Jack didn't want it. But, you know, if Lake City Medical Center will do what the previous operator did, why even having a discussion about having a vendor at the hospital?
Mr. Chair, Lake City Medical Center at that time refused to let us check the charts. And that's why we denied the financial assistance anywhere over there. And I will tell you that right now our EMTs in the county are pulling their hair out because they are waiting in line in the emergency room of the medical center. And that's not just me. You talk to the EMTs, okay?
Well, some of those are probably not real emergencies. People don't have insurance.
Irrelevant. The EMTs are tied up. What if there is a real emergency and none are available?
You just keep looking.
Yeah, I mean, I think all this stuff is gonna be looked at, you know, carefully. I can tell you as a board member, I'm gonna look at it. HCA is expanding. You know, I know they have plans because of Lakeshore closing. They have plans to expand their beds, their hospital. So, you know, we have to look with an eye up to the future as well. And so, Barbara, what you're asking a great question. And I can promise you, the board member, that's a question that I've asked as well in my own mind. And we're going to be looking at that carefully.
Mr. Chairman.
Medical professionals down there, could you expand on what it means to audit the chart?
To check and make sure that everything that you're being charged for is there.
Oh, so
Example,
does that mean we
example.
would just get a lump sum bill?
We get a lump sum bill every month. An example is the doctor's offices.
Huh?
When we audit their charts, we have one doctor that submitted, they saw, I think, 5 patients, and they gave 2 flu shots. Okay, and when the charts were audited, all of that was there. Now, there are times when we have come across, we're being charged for a doctor and a nurse practitioner saw them, and there is a difference in payment for a nurse practitioner. Okay, or And that we have been charged for an injection, but the injection is not charted. And those are, I want to say, human error. It happens in medicine too,
Yeah.
you know? And but we do, because we are a governmental agency, we do not pay for anything that we are aware that has not been completed.
I don't know what the legal, there's a legal definition for auditing, medical charts. So I would probably, I don't know if you have a comment on that or not. Do you or no?
Not at this time. I can think of HIPAA issues and
Yeah, I think
Other
of that
issues.
nature. Yeah, so I just don't know, I don't know. But I do think, in regards to, us as a board gathering information for our community, I would like to ask us to invite Rick Nagler, CEO of HCA, so that he could share with us the plans that they have. I just, as a physician on staff there, I know that there are plans to double the capacity of the emergency room. There are plans to add, 40, 50, 100 beds. So there's a lot of plans going on, knowing that they're currently the only institution in town. So I think we need all that information. This is an opportunity to get it right, and not just, we need to get it right. That's all I'm going to say. We need to get it right. So, HCA, it hasn't passed HCA's mind, and I'm not an HCA employee, but it hasn't passed their mind that they're the only hospital here in town. So currently running. So they do have plans to expedite the capability of the emergency room, inpatient beds, et cetera. So there's going to be some growth pains in the short term, but they're not long-term growth pains. And certainly they're well capitalized and they can make those things happen quickly. But so I think we should invite Rick Nagler at some point in our planning process to ask him what's going on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of things with this. I appreciate Dr. Thompson's remarks. They make a lot of sense. Just another reason that we don't need that hospital anymore. Obviously, the purpose of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority was indigent care. If the Lake City Medical Center can do that, that would be fine, I believe. And I believe if you look at the pro forma contract that was sent by the medical center to the hospital authority, they're willing to reimburse their care at Medicaid rates, which is as low as rates as you can get. I would remind this board that Shands at Lakeshore originally agreed to provide be reimbursed at the Medicare rates, and then they decided that they didn't want to pay the Medicare rates because they didn't want to do the coding, because I don't know why, it was too time intensive to do coding. Clearly, if they're going to pay with Medicaid, they're going to have to do the coding. The authority will know what is being paid for. So that makes sense. And if that's the case, I would suggest that all those people that Mr. Williams claims want to take over the hospital, those presentations that they do be in writing and be posted to the Lakeshore Hospital Authority website, not at the 12th hour, so that the public can look at those and understand what those proposals are. And I think it might behoove Mr. Thompson and the Lake City Medical Center to do the same. Their contract seems to be pretty cut and dry. They can perform the services that that Shands at Lakeshore was doing in their own hospital. So if this board can tell me a rational reason why this board needs to maintain the hospital when the Lake City Medical Center, the medical provider in the community, will do that, I think that's something that you folks need to discuss. Thank you. That's my only comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I address Mr. President? Brad, you brought up HIPAA regulations. Our program goes under the same HIPAA regulations that insurance companies do. And people sign saying that they understand that we will be auditing charts and stuff like that. So we are covered under all of the HIPAA regulations with that. Now, most of us don't check the charts. We have one person or two people that are designated. Sonia doesn't usually check them, but Cynthia checks the charts. She is our designee for checking the charts and getting the personal information. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Any further discussion? Anything needed on this item?
Just your feedback when you have an opportunity to review it and think about it. And certainly we'll document what we've heard tonight and make sure that whatever our plan of action is, it incorporates all of these things.
Your staff report is in your agenda packet, the last page. Board member comments, Ms. Chancey.
None, except that I am happy that our program still has 113 active members when many people in the community think we're shut down.
And give staff credit. They've made signs and flyers that have gone out around the community and on bulletin boards throughout the community as well. So they're actively trying to get the word out that we're here. We still have our program.
I did have one person approach me. There was a lady that was pregnant and she arrived at the medical center in the emergency room. She unexpectedly went into labor early. And unfortunately, the results were not very positive. She did have a stillborn. And because the medical center did not have the facilities to take care of her. And that is only one of many stories I've heard, but I was approached in church about that. So I wanted to share that with you. We are definitely lacking in OBGYN.
Well, if she had any sense, she would have known that Lake City Medical Center didn't have an OBGYN, and she was totally unaware of that. She was probably not fit to be a mother.
Dr. Thompson, do you have any
She was brought to the
comments?
hospital by the EMT. board.
They should have known.
We're on board member comments at this point. Dr. Thompson, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just think a couple things. One, we got to be careful with anecdotal stories, whether they're first-handed or not, because there's a lot of things that we probably don't know about that particular case. And I'm not trying to defend it, but I'm just saying we don't know. When we did talk to the state about the lack of OB or the need of OB, if you had an OB facility within 70 miles, you were well served. So we're certainly not, we're not considered an underserved area for OB. Remember, we had that discussion with Shams. And so then I think the other thing I would just, ask my fellow board members is I don't have the mindset going into this that we lost the hospital, therefore we have to find a way to replace it. I'm going into this with the idea of how can we best perform our mission to the people of this community. And our mission is taking care of indigent patients. My mindset is not how can we replace a hospital that we lost. It's how can we perform our mission. So I just would ask that all my board members would think about that as we go forward.
Douglas?
Always anecdotal, but got a bunch of homework. That's all I see. A lot of homework, a lot of meetings.
Mr. Williams, do you have anything to add?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Coberline?
Mr. Williams has worked with me a lot in December, and I appreciate him helping me to utter. Thank you. That's it.
All right. If there's no others, meeting adjourned.